this again, as we remember from earlier, this is Ayurveda. So if Ayurveda gives us these tools, and there were slides on here before that I was going to talk about with the Panchamaya model. So this is what the physical embodiment is. This is what an individual is. And Ayurveda gives us these tools. So that, again, in the end, we'll use these tools to be able to see ourselves clearly, to calm those waters. And the Upanishads talk about, so their take on the third sutra is that we are a unified being already, Tattvamasi, that we are a part, we are not an individual in traditional sense that we understand it. We are part of an ecosystem, and we are dependent on everything on the outside of us, even if we don't know it. And the workings of yoga, the process and the formula of yoga is to fall in line basically with what's already happening. I don't like that. So we all know this man. Probably won't be here without him. I had in 2013, I spent 8 months at the Iyengar Institute in Pune, and I lived like right next door to it, and I spent every day at the institute in the practice hall next to BKS Iyengar. And so I had been a couple of times where I was taught directly by him. So I was lucky enough to have some brief contact with BKS Iyengar. And a lot of my own personal work is informed by what he's developed. And this is, I think, a beautiful way to say it, what Descartes says, that yoga exists in the world because everything is linked. So nothing is outside the system. That's the implication of Sanatana Dharma. And of course, if you're taking even a single Iyengar class, you know that alignment is the name of the game. And it is through alignment of the body that I discovered the alignment of my mind, self, and intelligence. This is a callback to the Panchamaya model in a really eloquent way. So depression in yoga therapy, as far as yoga goes, stems from identifying with fluctuations of the mind, which comes from this sutra. So if we're not nirodhaing our chitta, basically, we become identified with it, and that's depression. This is what BKS Iyengar's take was on. So, just to put this back into perspective, what I talked about before, the asymmetry, the neural and the electrical asymmetry between the executive network that interacts with the world in the external environment, and the asymmetry between that and part of our minds and brains that interacts with everything on the interior. This speaks to the asymmetry here. So what this is saying is depressed patients tend to brood somewhere in the realm of, I would say, the Vijnanamaya or the Manomaya. And so there's just this overbearing brooding going on right here. And the beauty of yoga therapy is that it accesses the Annamaya and the Pranamaya and kind of links these two together. Right? So in healthy, kind of non-depressed, or clinically any other kind of psychological disturbed individuals, this asymmetry is not as present. Okay? It's not as vivid. So to connect these rings ends up looking like what the call for yoga therapy is. And I think, again, it's interesting that part of the mind, that part of the brain that's involved in internal processes is interior to the part of the brain that's involved with executive function, just like it is in this model. So this could be thought of, the Anamaya, as the exterior part of the brain, and the interior part of the brain is the interior aspect of the Manamaya model. Okay, so the mechanisms of yoga therapy, I just kind of gave a little bit of brief about that. I want to skip ahead real quick because there's been enough slides as it is to my case study, if I may, real quick. So,
because we're over time.
okay. Should I,
You can wrap, you can find out when I'm dropping out, yeah.
okay. So just as far as my case study goes, it was a 53-year-old female, basically more than half of her life, 23 years, she's been on antidepressants. So more than half her life she's been clinically depressed. At her first intake, she was crying. She expressed all those symptoms of feeling guilty about her physical state. She had chronic pain. She had diagnosed degenerative disc disease in the cervical spine. She had low back pathology. She had osteoarthritis in the knee. She had, interestingly enough, TBIs, 3 TBIs in her past. As you can see right here, history of present illness. Where is it there? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this part right here. So she suffered a TBI at 14 years old in an auto collision, at 25 years old in a horse riding incident, and at 20 years old with a whiplash in an auto collision. So TBI played into this, I think. What I basically did with her, this is something that I kind of want to, my basic plan right here, down below, is I think what made the biggest difference. She was chronically underhydrated, which I was going to go into as one of the etiologies of stress and depression, is lack of hydration. So I gave her just a water prescription first thing in the morning, breathing exercises, and sleep. So she also had middle insomnia that I talked about before. And I think it's really these 3 that made the biggest difference. This was the self-evaluation that I gave her initially. So you can see these numbers here, 11, 9, 11. These letters up here, I would have loved to have more time to go into it. Depression is defined on a continuum with anxiety and stress. So depression only makes sense when we have words like anxiety and stress. Okay? So here's where her first score, 11, 9, 11. Okay. Here's her final results. She came in with, what was the stress level initially? Started with an 8 out of 10, ended up with a 1 out of 10. She had, I think, like 3 to 4 depression, anxiety episodes since the start of our 6-week therapy together, or before she had it nearly every day. And here's the final score. So look says here. Okay, so here's the final score here. 104. Remember the previous one was 11, 9, 11. And here's how it's computed. So where before 11 was severe depression, 9 severe anxiety, and moderate stress. At the end, she registered at normal across the board. So in the final analysis, the prescription of yoga therapy as doing the opposite of what may be causing it, and if what is causing it resides in us, which is essentially an encasement of different parts of ourselves. And if the tools that we're given in the whole of yoga, which we saw before as just a Ayurveda, where yoga is a part of, but what really is a part of Sanatana Dharma, where yoga began essentially, is giving us all of these tools to deal with our mayas. So yoga therapy is really lifestyle therapy.
pronounce that, please?
Поздравляю.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so we'll go through. So just for those of you who came in a little bit after he started, we have a few rules for the room, which is positive feedback only. So you're free to ask questions, or we'll go around, everybody can say something or give something on the positive realm for today, unless you want otherwise.
Give me whatever you got.
Okay, he wants whatever you got, go. So we'll just.
I made it through the hardest part.
And I so encourage you guys. I've seen the whole I've seen all the slides. Please, it's on Blackboard. Have a look. There's so much richness, and as I was saying, hoping that each one of you will do a little class or put something at Sitar, because you put a lot into it, and there's so much amazing stuff in your presentation that could go for a whole weekend.
Lord, I am going to speak with John Kepner about, the next Sitars coming up is going to be in Newport Beach, and I'm going to ask him if he can feature you guys. I really am going to give it a big push, and I would just say overall, it was excellent, but you need to make it more of a sutra. So when you're up there, you have a certain amount of time, and that just comes from practicing. But really excellent.
Thank you.
Well, I want to congratulate you. First one out the door is like so stressful. Speaking of stress, so.
Yeah, it was interesting because with all of the research that I had to do on it, because it's such a vast subject, what I ended up doing is I had to go outside of my home to study, because I love being at my house and it's very distracting. We have 3 dogs, my lady, my mom lives there, so it's just constant engagement and almost like a draw to do anything but study. So I tried the library thing for a couple days, way too dreary and confined for me. Okay, so then I started sitting at the beach, in my truck by the beach. I live like right on the coast. And then what I found was, here I am sitting for just like nearly every day, researching depression, and there was good surf out. And so my medicine for dreariness and depression was just feet away, but I couldn't touch it. I had to read about the very state that I was currently in.
It was experiential. Yeah, that's what it is. Yoga is experiential.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's very interesting about the sleep and hydration, that it really makes such a big difference. It just kind of goes to prove that the physical body can influence the emotional and mental body so much, and I think it's vice versa as well.
Yeah.
So it's nice to point that out.
I love the range and depth of what you presented. Congratulations, it's really good.
Thank you.
I like the photos and the detail. You had a lot of detail in there, really expansive. And I love the part of the brain where you connected it to the kosher model. That was really amazing.
Yeah, I really liked those visuals and kind of how that picture was really similar to the picture of the brain. And I liked how you typed into the Yoga Sutras and some of the older texts.
Awesome. It's funny, I actually had to kind of reel myself in a little bit.
That was really good.
Yeah, really intelligent.
I thought it was so impressive and professional that you could present this anywhere where there's a need for it.
Thank you.
I love that it was dynamic, and then you use a lot of visuals to keep, such a heavy subject, and the visuals just keeps you, alert,
Right.
and at the same time, keeping a good sense of humor. It's just soften up the energy, and this is such a rich presentation. I know you could go even over a couple of hours,
Yeah.
and it looks so professional. It's really great. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, I wanted to do that with the visuals, just to not make it so textbook-like. It only cost me a couple of nights of sleep, but
Sure.
I also would like to thank you very much for
having me here. It was really I feel you really own this topic. It's so comprehensive. I just want to congratulate you.
Thank you, thank you. That means a lot coming from you, if you have a history in this.
I love the way you combine scientific evidence and also textual evidence of the Yoga Sutras and all the other texts of yoga. So yeah, like it a lot. Congratulations.
No, good job.
I was hoping you were going to start doing my project too, and I was just going to be done.
Oh, like, how do I not
Gone.
take away from Jasmine and Andre topics, but
That was good.
there's a lot of times where I wish I was like, why didn't I just like do something on osteoarthritis?
Away of the hip. Yeah, I think it was awesome. You basically had 3 presentations in one. You really did. You went to such depth. So just huge congratulations on that, because no matter what you got to today, all that serves you, and your future as a yoga therapist, clearly. And I agree with that, what everybody said, and you definitely owned it. You could see as you were talking about it, that I could see you were making a point. You were drawing from all your expertise, from your yogic expertise as well as all this research you've been doing, and drawing it together. And I love that connection. And a couple of little details. I love how you transitioned to that formula, because when you started out, I was like, I wonder who's going to transition it. It's really beautiful. And I love the links to Ayurveda and Hippocrates. That was really nice. And the definition, it was so helpful, because this is an area that's not my area, and you made it so, it was so easy to understand what you were presenting, really grasping it.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you.
And the point about self-assessment being necessary was really interesting, as well as the inflammation link and the aspirin. I didn't know, and those are new points, really interesting. And I just love how the power of the evaluation that, it kind of forced you guys to do, and then reassessment, and looking at how you did that. It's so powerful. It's like objective. And my question is, how did she react did you show her all the changes?
Yeah, well, you know what I think helped me with her specifically was, obviously her compliance was brilliant. We had our intake, basically we had our second session 2 days after our intake. So the first thing I asked her, in the intake, was about hydration and finding out what that was, and giving her that was the first actual HEP. So those 3 main points: sleep, hydration, breathing practices. She said that the very next day when she woke up in the morning, and she made sure that she was in the habit of drinking ice water first thing in the morning. So I was like, absolutely no fucking ice, warm infuse it with lemon. And so she said she always has some kind of digestive discomfort, which I would have shown on here if I had more time, that antidepressants in some cases mess with is the GI tract. She said her digestion just felt kind of like awakened, and she had almost like a nearly everyday incidence of headaches. And I think 2 weeks after, I asked her about headaches, and she was like, I didn't even notice. I hadn't really had a headache since we started. And just that small thing, just hydration, as small as it is, it's so big. This is part of what I think yoga therapy is that what I showed that little humorous link about this big complex advanced math formula, that yoga isn't that. The efficacy of it lies in its simplicity. And in that 33rd sutra, it's just do the opposite of what's making your life shake. That's it. And that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes it takes a little bit more to figure that out.
Great job. Really. So we'll just take about a 10-minute break.